I've been going through these 6 practices that are a condensation of all of the practices we can do to train our mind. So I wanted to go through within those concentration in particular. So today, which is the 5th of these 6. So all of these trainings, these are activities or practices that we can do to train our mind. Excuse me, I've gone through in the past, giving, this practice of generosity, moral discipline or ethical discipline, the practice of acting in appropriate ways, not acting in inappropriate ways, and so forth, and patience, which is mind that is opposing anger, opposing disturbed states of mind like jealousy and anger. Effort, joyful effort, which is summoning energy and joy for our practice. Concentration today, which is stabilizing our mind. And then finally, wisdom, which will deal with both on Tuesday of this coming week, and then the next Saturday after we'll spend a couple of classes on wisdom, because this class is called Digital Wisdom, so we might as well explain what that really is meant to be. So concentration was the one that I wanted to focus on here. Concentration, there are a lot of teachers, meditation teachers, who are a little bit not enthusiastic about the word concentration, the term concentration, to describe this, because it tends to evoke this idea that you're squeezing down to pay like tight attention to something. Concentration has a very different feeling than that. That's why an alternative way of phrasing it is mental stabilization, just finding a state of stability in the mind. And that is, it's very powerful. It's very powerful to evoke that sense of a stable mind, a mind that is just peaceful no matter what's happening around it. It's like the depths of the ocean, where there might be some turbulence, some waves and so forth on the surface of the ocean, but the depths of the ocean are always very, very still and peaceful and tranquil. So mental stabilization is allowing our mind to sink down into deeper states where there is this stability, there is this tranquility and peace. So that's what I'll describe in some more detail. But we can begin, as usual, with some meditation, just to begin to evoke some of this practice and concentration. Now, concentration or mental stabilization is a byproduct of the activity of meditation. Meditation is an activity that moves in that direction. We don't always experience deep levels of mental stabilization, but the more we practice meditation, the easier it is for us to reach such a state of peace. So we can begin as we usually do, just by finding a comfortable position. We ideally, if we're engaging in sitting meditation, we have our back straight but relaxed. And even that is a very subtle, refined instruction. How straight, how relaxed, a little bit too relaxed, a little bit too straight. Well, that's where we need to just feel our way through that. There's a balance there, and we can keep seeking that balance. So we take a deep breath in and out. And then another deep breath in and out, inviting ourselves to relax. And then a third breath, just asking ourselves, what is important right now? And we have stilled ourselves. We have stilled ourselves externally. We've stopped moving externally. Then we can begin to attend to our breath, become aware of our breathing as a way to gradually still our mind internally. Our mind has a tendency to fly off, so we tether our mind to our body and to our breathing to allow our mind to become more still. With each breath, try to bring some awareness of that breath. Hold that awareness of each breath. We notice that our body has its own intelligence. It's breathing on its own. We're not trying to take control of our breath, just trying to relax and watch this natural process, as if we were watching the tides flow in and out at the ocean. We try to notice the details of our breathing. Perhaps the air is a bit cooler as it comes in, a bit warmer as it goes out. Some breaths are long, some are short. Our in-breath might be longer than our out-breath, or vice versa. And if we find our mind getting distracted or wandering off, we can encourage ourselves by recognizing that this breath is our own life force. This breath is what sustains us moment by moment. It is what gives us the opportunity to learn, to experience this life, to transform ourselves. Every one of these breaths is extremely precious. If our mind has wandered off, we can return our attention to the breath and to the body. Just becoming aware of some of the subtleties of our breath, and the experience of our body. And then we can shift to experiencing a sense of gratitude for our life, which gives us the opportunity to transform, to change, to learn. We can develop a sense of gratitude for those around us, the people and circumstances in our life that enable us on our personal journey. And we can develop an intention through the short time we have together here. How wonderful if we could increase our own concentration or our understanding of the path to concentration, build a much more stable mind that can help us to accomplish all of our inner and outer goals. And then with this intention, we can relax our concentration and open our eyes. Okay. So this there are two ways of describing the practices or the trainings that we can engage in to transform our mind. This more extensive one, these 6 activities, can actually be summarized into a group of just 3. So the 3 are moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom. So the latter 2 remain the same, but the moral discipline can be considered just this large container. Giving and patience can be drawn out of that as like particularly powerful practices that we can invest energy in. But the simple version of the path to inner transformation is just practicing moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom. And the way these work is that moral discipline is likened to the body, to our body, and concentration is likened to our hand, and wisdom is likened to a sharp axe with which we can cut down the tree of our suffering. So this is back before the world became concerned about not cutting down all the trees, but you need a sharp axe if you want to cut down a tree. If you've got a blunt axe, you're going to be whacking for a long time. If you've got a sharp axe, a stable hand, and a strong body, you can cut down the tree of your suffering in a relatively easy way. Now, just digging into that analogy a little bit more, moral discipline is like a body, meaning it does, and think about the analogy of this, our lumberjack, our spiritual lumberjack. So you think about this, the body is what does most of the work. That's where most of the strength is, right? Strength in the legs and the back and the arms and so forth. And similarly, most of our lives are not spent in meditation, right? Most of our lives, we're busy engaging with many people and so forth. But as we're busy with the rest of our life, how attentive are we being to the impact that we're having on the people around us? So I summarized moral discipline before as refraining from harming others, intentionally, determined to benefit them, and abiding by whatever commitments we've made. That's something we can be doing in every moment of our life, right? Being careful not to harm others, intentionally benefiting them, abiding by whatever commitments we've taken. So this is a daily training, and because we can spend our entire life being careful, thoughtful, precise about our behaviors, that's how we build this deep strength in with moral discipline, and that strength then powers the hand of concentration. So the hand of concentration is dependent upon that general bodily strength. That I've used this very simple analogy in the past. It's your discipline that gets you to the meditation class. It's your concentration that is the degree of peace that you might experience here. But once you've gotten yourself to the class, the rest is not that hard. Sometimes it goes better, sometimes worse, but but concentration has the same kind of refinement that your hand has, right? Your hand has this refined ability to touch and contact, experience things, hold objects, release them, and so forth. And so concentration is a very fine-tuned process. It's a process that is similar, in some ways to these more sophisticated activities that require some balance. Surfing is coming to mind. Not that I'm a surfer, but some balance in the face of the waves, right? Working with the waves and your own body weight and so forth. Playing a musical instrument, this sort of balance of not too strong, not too soft, etc. So concentration has this this refinement. And when we're practicing meditation, meditation is a deliberate training in concentration. It is a deliberate, it's one of these activities. But we also practice concentration on some level anytime we want to carry out any activity. And we know these days, with our busy lives and mobile phones and notifications coming all the time and so forth, that there are a gazillion things that could possibly distract us. Right. And it's very difficult to actually focus long enough to get work done. Now, this has been something that's been a problem for the history of mankind, certainly for the last 80 years, but it certainly has not gotten any better in the last 10 or 15 years. So the I was reading a book from Peter Drucker from 60 years ago about the effective executive. And he was saying, if people, it takes time. It takes more time than you think to accomplish anything. And if your life is just filled up with all these busy, a lot of meetings and distractions, you don't really have any time to focus on doing anything. Yesterday, I forget where it was, I was reading something just about how to deal with our incredibly bad abilities at estimating how long things will take. And you sort of get a group of people together, take your best guess on how long you think that this project will take, bearing in mind everybody's particular responsibilities, come up with a conclusion that everybody can agree to, and multiply it by 3. The factor of 3 has tended to work pretty well for me. That everything takes about 3 times longer than I think it will take. And I wish it wasn't like that, but at 44, I'm pretty sure I'm going to die being bad at estimating at this point. So everything takes a lot of time, and not only does it take time, it takes concentration. Now, if you don't have concentration, you can set aside 4 hours, 8 hours, whatever. You're still not going to get anything done, right? Because your mind is taking these micro vacations all the time when you're not really engaged in what you're doing. You might be sitting there. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is to continue sitting there. Sometimes the best thing you can do is get up, take a walk, go have a conversation, get some fresh air, something like that, take a nap, come back to the problem if you're stuck on it. Because all of these are kind of part of the art and science of figuring out how to be effective, and especially concentration is a key aspect of that. Now, there is this experience, I mentioned this in the past before, but this Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi wrote this book called Flow back maybe 40 years ago about this positive psychological state of flow in which it is naturally enjoyable and your mind just naturally, tunes out all of the other distractions around you, and you're totally absorbed in that one thing that you're focused on. And it's naturally enjoyable, but also it's making the best use of your skills. And this flow state, it was one of the early voices in positive psychology in the last century. This flow state is a state of concentration. It is a state of, that is a good way of describing what concentration is like. It is that experience of flow. And we experience flow, according to what Csikszentmihalyi said, we experience flow when the challenges are a reasonable match for our skill level. So if it's too challenging, we get overwhelmed. If it's not challenging enough, we get bored. But if it's somewhere right in the middle, then the challenge can gradually increase and our skill will gradually increase to meet it. But there's this sort of channel that he describes as this flow channel where as the challenge gets bigger, if your skills are getting bigger to match it, you can continue to stay in a state of flow. And so meditation is very much in that same vein. Even a simple meditation like breathing meditation, probably you can relate to the idea that even within one sitting, it can be both, feel too challenging and boring, right? Oh, this is boring, but too challenging. And so what's important anytime you're getting into a state of flow is that you actually be into it, you actually be interested in it. And so there's actually lots of meditations. We keep focusing on the meditation of the breath. Last week, I guided some meditation on patience, like recalling a state in which we were angry and then learning to let go of that. But there are countless different meditations that we can do, but they all have this similar characteristic where we are intentionally keeping our mind focused on what we're doing. But we know our mind can run out of mental energy, so we need to be, we need to be balanced, spending enough time that we can start to get into some greater state of concentration, um, but not spending so much time that we get exhausted. But this is where the discipline comes in. We need to be practicing. We need to be coming back to that practice of meditation regularly if we want to be getting better at it. And so this is, while modern people have expressed a lot of interest in meditation, the way it was framed traditionally is that moral discipline was more the purview of people with busy lives. Their main practice was moral discipline, and concentration or meditation and wisdom were more for people who didn't have to engage in a lot of busy activities, like monks and nuns and those who could carve out a lot of time. But because our work and our lives are so, they're mental, we're doing mental jobs, right? It's mental stimulation. We're all involved in all of this thinking work. Our lives are very similar. They're very similar in, well, that we need meditation as well, right? Even for busy people, especially for busy people, we need meditation. Even though in the midst of that busyness, a lot of that busyness will tend to come into that meditation and disrupt or disturb that that state of peace. So if you've been very busy and you've just kind of rushed in and sat down to meditate, it can take a little while for your mind to settle, right? And there's just a little bit of agitation going on. But one of the reasons why we meditate on our body is that it's, it's kind of concrete and it's there, but also the energies within our body can be the object of our meditation. Like, we can meditate on the energies in our body and make this an internal experience that's actually physically felt. So when you're in a flow state, one of the reasons it's naturally enjoyable, whatever you're doing, playing video games or, writing or singing or whatever you're doing to get into a flow state, one of the reasons it's naturally enjoyable, you actually feel it in your body. You don't just feel it in your head. You feel it in your body. So if you think about like a feeling of joy or happiness or peace or contentment and so forth, we don't tend to feel those just up in our head. Like, do you feel joy? Where do you feel joy? Is it in your heart, maybe? Do you feel joy like right in the front of your brain? Not for most, I don't know. You can ask yourself, where do you feel relaxation? Where do you feel joy? Where do you feel peace? And so forth. It's a bodily experience, right? And that is some signal that you're on the right track. And it's a what you'd call a positive feedback loop, where the more peace you have, the more peace you want. The more joy you have, the more joy you want. And you can begin to focus on that bodily awareness. And so one of the reasons we meditate on the body is to begin to tune into those physical signs of relaxation, of peace, joy. I've used the word bliss in the past as a stronger version of that. Tuning into that as a sign indicating that, this is on the right track. We're moving in the right direction here. Now, you're not always going to have that, but when you do, and that's why you need the discipline. Discipline is always the fallback. That's always like where we go back to. Okay, all right, be a good person, and keep coming back and practicing meditation. But then gradually that joy comes. So we've talked about some probably now a couple months ago, the question came up about what does it feel like? What does it look like if you really master all these practices? What does enlightenment look like, so to speak? I like to think about enlightenment as Well, there's there's two there's two levels. One is what's called personal liberation. The other is called the Great Enlightenment. Personal liberation means you figured out how to solve your own problems, like perfectly. Not from external solutions, but you've so deeply stabilized habits of mind that you are basically effectively free from all of your problems. You've just understood how, no matter what's going on, you're not experiencing problems. Now, enlightenment is very similar to that, except that you realize that you've generalized your own experience to understand how to solve everybody's problems. That in a sense, this body that we have, this life that we have, is an example. It's just one example of a human being. And if you think of yourself as just a sort of a generic human being, this is like one example of human being. If I can solve this human being's problems, I can solve everybody's problems. That's the meaning of enlightenment, where you basically think, I am no different from anybody else, really. I'm not special. I get jealous, everybody gets jealous. I get tired, everybody gets tired. I get confused, everybody gets confused, and so forth. If I can solve this person's problems, I really understand how to solve human problems in general. And the powerful thing about being human is we have this animal body that we're walking around with, this animal body, but we have this mind that is very, very powerful, right? My wife and I were talking about, as far as we could recall or think, humans are the only species that would contemplate things like suicide. So it's a little bit dark turn for this, but suicide really is thinking well outside of survival, right? It's thinking outside of this life. It's you've got a mind that can so distance yourself from this body that you begin to ask questions like, do I really make sense here? Do I belong here? Is this worth doing, etc. And that's on the darker side, but we can also empathize with others very deeply. We can understand concepts. So our mind can go into in the Buddhist tradition, it's sort of, well, in a lot of religious traditions, or most societies, originally people were polytheistic, right? The idea there's many gods and deities and so forth. Our mind can enter into what you could liken to God realms, where they're sort of entering this divine realm where you're dealing with these things that are concepts that are distant and divorced from the physical world and so forth. So we have this mind that can range all the way up into these divine states. We have the body of an animal. So what we're doing is, with meditation, especially when we're focusing on breathing meditation, we're learning to help to guide this animal body with this powerful, incredible mind, and figuring out how to get them to work together effectively. And that's what's so unusual about a human being. We're kind of grounded in this reality. We'll die, within a matter of a few decades. We're very grounded in all of them. In pain, we have pain, we have tiredness, we have all of these miseries, the same that animals experience, but we have this very flexible mind that can take an unusual approach to taming and transforming this animal-like body, getting to the point where every animal has this natural homeostasis, like I've mentioned in the past. This, when we fall asleep, especially, we're all angels, right? We all are happy, peaceful, joyful. Every animal has this natural inner healing capability. But what we can do is cultivate our minds so that we bring that out all the time. So we have this natural radiance where our body is actually experiencing this joy all the time. Even if there's pain or tiredness or whatever, we can bring out that we've unblocked our heart. We've sort of awakened our heart. And so this is the broader picture of the path to enlightenment is sometimes called awakening the heart. And the path to that is through concentration, through developing such a stability of mind that we can abide in a state of peace where we're connected to our body and aware, for example, of our breathing and experiences of joy or peace, relaxation, bliss, and so forth within our body, undistracted by other things, and then going deeper, deeper, deeper into that. And so the experience of concentration is not like focus and squeeze your head and get tense and so forth. It's more like an experience of just like an oceanic experience of getting absorbed in something, so deeply absorbed. A little bit like if you're reading a book, you get totally absorbed in the book, you have some experience of flow. Like all of these other experiences in which we have a flow state, we get totally absorbed. But here we're doing it just with these inner objects of concentration. We're not concentrating on anything outward, but we're absorbing inwardly. And because you can get absorbed in a movie, but what happens then is that your body is going through all of the fear and the anxiety and the tension, and you're sort of being dragged around by that. But when we're meditating, you're being absorbed, but you're in charge of the narrative. And the narrative is peace and well-being. And that's the story that we're practicing. And all of this is just approached gradually and patiently, one moment at a time, sort of laying down these little habits. So every single moment that you're practicing meditation is building your familiarity to move in that direction. So while it's kind of nice to talk about these where this could be headed, these lofty attainments that we could experience, it's also very powerful to recognize that even if you don't feel anything in a meditation, just the fact that you sat there and you tried, you're actually strengthening that at least that discipline of getting there and trying. And probably on some level, you are actually more peaceful than you were before. Like you are strengthening that concentration. You are strengthening it. But it is imperceptible. It is laid down like this book title, Atomic Habits. It's laid down like one layer of atomic habits at a time, like just imperceptibly slight progress. But every little effort, every time we attempt, we are getting closer, making progress in that direction. So, all right. So that's a lot that I opened up there. I wanted to we can wind up a little bit with some meditation for just a few minutes. And again, if you do have time, I'm happy to stay afterwards to discuss. But having opened up all of these topics, what I'd like for us to do in meditation is just to return to a state of peace. Again, just taking a deep breath in and out to help us to reset a bit. And then noticing within our body how the experience of relaxation, joy, peace, bliss, all of those things are experienced in the body. And they are part of this path. They are steps on this path to concentration. And we can just appreciate if we can notice any even slight increase in our peace, even slight increase in our relaxation, joy. Just appreciate that. And we meditate on that itself. We meditate on that relaxation itself. And we can recognize these different elements. There is the discipline of our working to be a good person throughout our life, returning to practicing meditation as often as we can. There is the mindfulness of paying attention to things like our breath, not forgetting what it is that we're meditating on, exercising our memory. And there is the inner experience of relaxation, peace, joy that can arise as our mind settles. And gradually, if we assemble all of these conditions, if we assemble that discipline, mindfulness, joy, relaxation, gradually we start getting a deep experience of concentration where we're happy to remain in this state, where we enjoy remaining in this state, where our mind can linger for longer and longer, first perhaps for a minute, gradually maybe for 5 minutes, gradually gaining the ability to return our attention immediately if we get distracted, until gradually we can meditate for even 20 minutes without ever completely losing our object of meditation. And then we can conclude by thinking how wonderful if through practices such as this, we gradually build these inner habits until eventually we gain the ability to remain joyful, peaceful all the time, gain the ability to solve not only our own problems, but understand how to solve others' problems as well. And then we can open our eyes and rise from our meditation.